Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey talking to you. Let me tell you something real tonight, something a lot of people don't want to say out loud. Love does not disappear because you step back. Love disappears when you give too much of yourself to someone who hasn't earned it. And that's the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey talking to you. Let me slow this thing down and really talk to you from a place of truth, because this first idea right here changes everything if you truly understand it. Absence creates value. And I don't mean disappearing to manipulate. I don't mean playing childish games. And I don't mean acting cold out of anger. I mean learning when to step back so your presence can finally be felt. See, when you are always there, always available, always answering, always fixing, always adjusting, people get used to you like furniture in a room. They don't wake up every day appreciating the chair they sit on. They only notice that chair when it's gone and they have to stand. That's human nature. And love is not exempt from that truth. Too many women believe love is proven by endurance. They think if I stay through confusion, inconsistency, silence, and half effort, eventually he'll see my loyalty and reward me with commitment. But let me tell you something about a man's mind. A man does not measure value by how long you stay through discomfort. He measures value by how much he feels when you are no longer there. When you overgive, you remove the opportunity for him to invest. When you over-explain, you remove the mystery. When you are always present, you remove the urgency. And without urgency, there is no action. A man does not rush to protect something he believes will always be there no matter how he treats it. Absence forces reflection. Silence forces evaluation. Distance forces realization. When you step back, a man finally has to sit with his thoughts. He starts replaying conversations. He notices the quiet where your voice used to be. He fills the gap where your support once lived. And that's when understanding begins. You see, value is often invisible when it's constant, just like air. You don't thank God for oxygen until you can't breathe. And when you are constantly available, constantly forgiving, constantly accommodating, you become invisible. Not because you aren't worthy, but because you've made it too easy for someone to forget what life felt like before you. Absence is not punishment, it's clarity. It removes confusion from the equation. It answers questions without words. It says, I am not something you get access to without intention. And that message is powerful. When a woman pulls back with dignity, not drama, she sends a signal that cannot be ignored. She's saying, I know my worth, and I won't beg you to see it. That hits different. Because now, a man is no longer in control of the situation. He is no longer comfortable. He is no longer certain. And uncertainty makes a man act. Men act when they feel loss approaching. We don't change because someone asks us to. We change because we don't want to lose something valuable. And if you never create the space for loss to be felt, you never give him a reason to rise. Let me be honest with you. Some men don't commit because they don't feel pressure. Everything they want is already available. Your time, your body, your loyalty, your emotional labor, your understanding. So in his mind, why rush? Why decide? Why lock it down when it's already there? But the moment you remove yourself from the role of convenience, everything shifts. Suddenly he's wondering who you're talking to. Suddenly, he's remembering how you used to show up. Suddenly, he's realizing that not everyone replaces what you gave him. Absence reminds him that you had options, that other men see what he overlooked, that your presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. And that realization awakens respect. A woman who understands this doesn't disappear to make a man chase. She disappears to realign herself with her own value. She starts pouring into her life, her peace, her growth. She becomes full without him, and fullness is magnetic. Here's the truth a lot of people won't tell you. When you step back and a man doesn't move forward, you didn't lose him. You escaped settling, because the right man doesn't panic at absence. He responds to it with action. Absence exposes intentions. It shows you whether he valued you or just the access you provided. And that knowledge is power, because once you see the truth, you stop fighting reality. So when I say absence creates value, I'm telling you that stepping back is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. It's understanding that love should not require self-abandonment. When you give people space, they show you who they really are. And when someone truly sees your value, they don't wait, they don't hesitate, they don't gamble with losing you. They step up. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey talking to you. Let me tell you something that took me a long time to learn and even longer to live by. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is more attractive than self-respect. You can be beautiful, kind, loyal, intelligent, and loving, but if you don't respect yourself, people will struggle to respect you too. That's not cruelty, that's reality. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase validation. Self-respect is quiet confidence. It's knowing who you are without needing someone else to confirm it. And when a woman carries herself like that, it does something powerful to a man. See, a man can sense when a woman's world revolves around him. He feels it in the way she waits. He hears it in the way she explains. He sees it in the way she sacrifices herself just to keep him comfortable. And once he senses that, he relaxes, because there's no risk. There's no urgency. There's no pressure to rise. But when a woman respects herself, she changes the entire dynamic. She doesn't demand attention, she commands it. She doesn't ask for consistency, she expects it. She doesn't threaten to leave, she's already prepared to walk if necessary. And that energy is rare. Self-respect teaches people how to treat you without you saying a word. When you don't tolerate mixed signals, confusion disappears. When you don't accept excuses, effort improves. When you don't overextend yourself, people learn the value of your presence. A woman with self-respect does not fear being alone more than she fears being disrespected. And that mindset is dangerous in the best way, because now a man knows he can't play with her time. He can't test her boundaries. He can't show up halfway and expect full access. Let me say this clearly. Men don't fall in love with women who abandon themselves for love. Men fall in love with women who choose themselves first, because that tells us something important. It tells us she's not here out of desperation. She's here by choice. When you respect yourself, you don't argue about your worth. You don't convince someone to see your value. You don't prove why you deserve commitment. You simply remove yourself from situations that don't align with what you want. And that's when things shift. A man starts to feel the difference. He feels the lack of access. He feels the absence of emotional labor. He feels the silence where reassure, rants used to live. And now he's forced to ask himself real questions. Not how much can I get away with, but am I about to lose someone special? Self-respect creates standards, and standards make a man step up or step aside. There is no in between. When a woman knows her worth, she doesn't negotiate the basics. She doesn't lower the bar to keep someone interested. She raises her expectations and watches who is willing to meet them. Here's the part a lot of people misunderstand. Self-respect doesn't push the right man away. It filters out the wrong ones. The man who was only there for convenience will leave. The man who enjoyed access without responsibility will disappear. But the man who sees your value will lean in, because men respect women who respect themselves. We protect what we respect. We commit to what we value, and we rise for what challenges us to be better. When a woman stops tolerating inconsistency, she becomes consistent with herself. When she stops chasing clarity, she becomes clear. When she stops accepting crumbs, she becomes a full meal. And once that happens, the energy changes. A man begins to feel like he needs to earn his place. He begins to consider the future. He begins to imagine losing you to someone else who recognizes your worth immediately. And that thought is uncomfortable. Self-respect doesn't scream, "Marry me." It whispers, "I'll be fine without you." And that whisper is powerful because it removes control from the relationship. Now, the man is not choosing from a position of comfort. He's choosing from a position of respect. And when respect meets desire, commitment stops being scary. It becomes necessary. That's the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey talking to you. Let me talk to you about something that makes people uncomfortable because it requires discipline, patience, and emotional strength. Silence. Not the silent treatment, not anger, not withdrawal out of pride. I'm talking about intentional silence, the kind of silence that comes from self-control and clarity, not confusion or fear. See, a lot of people think chasing is love. They think if I text more, call more, explain more, give more, then eventually he'll understand how serious I am. But let me tell you something about human nature, especially a man's nature. The more you chase, the less valuable you appear. Not because you aren't valuable, but because urgency signals imbalance. When you chase, you are doing all the emotional labor. You are filling the space that he should be stepping into. You are answering questions he hasn't asked. You are reassuring someone who hasn't committed. And every time you do that, you train him to relax while you exhaust yourself. Silence changes the game because it removes pressure from you and places responsibility on him. When you stop explaining, he starts thinking. When you stop reaching, he starts wondering. When you stop chasing, he has to decide whether he's going to move or lose you. Silence creates room for a man to feel. And men don't feel deeply when they are being constantly stimulated. We feel in quiet moments, We feel an absence. We feel when something familiar is suddenly missing. When you go quiet, a man starts replaying things in his mind. He notices the delay. He notices that the energy has shifted. And that shift forces awareness. Awareness forces accountability. Here's the truth. Chasing tells a man, I'll stay no matter what. Silence says, I know my value, and I'm not afraid to walk. And those two messages land very differently. When you are always available, there is no urgency to decide. When you are always explaining, there is no need to understand. When you are always initiating, there is no reason for effort. Silence removes the safety net. A man begins to ask himself questions when silence enters the room. Is she pulling away? Did I mess up? Is she still care? And that internal dialogue is important because commitment starts as a question before it becomes a decision. Silence is powerful because it reveals intentions. A man who is serious will reach out, clarify, and step up. A man who was only enjoying convenience will fade away. And in both cases, silence gives you the truth without confrontation. Let me say this clearly. Silence is not weakness. It's restraint. It's emotional maturity. It's choosing peace over chaos. And that level of control is attractive. When you stop chasing, you regain your center. You stop reacting. You stop overthinking. You stop trying to manage outcomes. And that calm confidence changes how you are perceived. A woman who can sit in silence without panic is dangerous because now she's not driven by fear of loss. She's driven by self-respect. And men feel that energy immediately. Silence also protects your dignity. It keeps you from saying things you don't mean. It keeps you from overexposing your emotions to someone who hasn't earned them. It keeps you from negotiating your worth in moments of insecurity. A man doesn't miss noise, he misses presence. And when your presence is no longer easily accessible, it gains weight, it gains meaning, it gains value. Here's something most people won't tell you. Silence gives a man the opportunity to lead. And a man who wants to marry you wants to lead. He wants to feel needed, not chased. He wants to feel chosen, not pressured. When why? Ooh, go silent. You're not disappearing. You're observing. You're allowing actions to speak louder than promises. You're watching whether he moves with intention or stays comfortable. And if he doesn't move, silence saves you from forcing a future that was never meant to be. Silence brings clarity. It clears confusion. It clears excuses. It clears emotional fog. What's left is truth. And truth is always your ally. When you stop chasing, you send a message that you are complete, that you are grounded, that you are not afraid of outcomes. And that kind of strength changes everything because when silence meets interest, effort appears. And when effort appears consistently, commitment follows. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Harvey talking to you. Now, let me take a minute to talk to you about something that too many people overlook, something that separates women who get played from women who get the real deal. Purpose. I'm talking about having a life so full, so intentional, and so meaningful that a man doesn't just notice you, he respects you, values you, and ultimately wants to invest in you for the long haul. Purpose attracts promise. And if you understand this, it will change the way you approach love forever. See, too many women define themselves by the men in their lives. They measure success by attention, validation, and how much a man shows up for them. And when they do that, they create a dangerous dynamic. They make themselves available for manipulation, for excuses, for inconsistency, and for half-hearted commitment. When you put your life on pause for someone else, you are no longer the prize. You are the convenience. And men, especially good men, know the difference. Purpose, on the other hand, makes you irresistible. A woman who has goals, who has passions, who is actively building her life is magnetic. She is a force to be reckoned with. She doesn't have to beg for attention because she has already given value to herself, to her dreams, and to the people who matter. And when a man sees that, he doesn't just want you in his life. He wants to commit to you because he recognizes that he is not the center of your world. You are a queen in your own right. And he has the honor of standing beside you. Here's the thing about purpose. It creates independence, and independence creates respect. When you live intentionally, you no longer chase approval. You no longer tolerate disrespect. You no longer argue over clarity. You no longer settle for half-hearted effort. And that level of self-determination forces a man to step up or step aside. He has no choice because a woman who knows her purpose isn't bargaining for attention. She's choosing how she is treated. Purpose also communicates value without words. A man can feel it. He can sense when a woman's life is bigger than the space he occupies. He notices the way she manages her time, the way she handles her energy, the way she protects her heart. And when he feels that, he can no longer take you for granted. Suddenly, he's paying attention to what he has in front of him and realizing he might lose it if he doesn't act intentionally. And let me tell you something else. Purpose is contagious. A man sees a woman who is moving, growing, and evolving, and it challenges him to do the same. It brings out his best self because he knows he is in the presence of someone extraordinary. When a woman is anchored in her purpose, she is not just living life, she is elevating everyone around her. That energy draws the right man like gravity. But purpose is not just about work or ambition. It's about emotional stability, self-love, and mental clarity. It's about having a life that cannot be shaken by inconsistency or neglect. It's about creating a space where man can either meet you as an equal or walk away. And the right man will rise to meet that level of energy because he wants to build a future with someone who already has one. A woman with purpose doesn't vanish out of manipulation. She vanishes to maintain her energy, to protect her peace, and to ensure she remains aligned with her vision. And that disappearance is powerful because it allows him to feel the value of what he might lose. It allows him to measure his intentions. It allows him to decide whether he's willing to commit or just enjoy convenience. Purpose also teaches patience. When you are living intentionally, you understand that not every man who enters your life deserves your time, your attention, or your love. You are selective because your life matters, your goals matter, your peace matters. And that kind of discernment is rare. Most women will settle for noise. A woman with purpose waits for substance. And here's the beauty of it. When a man sees a woman with purpose, he doesn't just want her attention. He wants to invest in her life. He wants to be part of her world, not the center of it. He wants to stand beside her, to support her dreams, to protect her peace, and to commit because he recognizes that she is a woman of worth. And that is when marriage stops being an option. It becomes the natural next step. Living with purpose also eliminates desperation. And desperation is a killer in relationships. When you are desperate for a man's validation, you compromise your standards. You accept behavior you shouldn't. You excuse inconsistencies you shouldn't. But when your life is full, when your heart is full, when your mind is full, you don't settle. You don't negotiate for love that isn't intentional. And a man recognizes that immediately. Purpose is strength in action. It is confidence that is visible. It is energy that cannot be ignored. When you live with purpose, you are no longer chasing a man to validate your existence. Instead, you are building a life that demands respect, attention, and commitment from the right person. And that kind of life creates a man who not only wants to marry you, but who is ready, willing, and fully capable of doing so. So remember, ladies and gentlemen, purpose is not just a lifestyle. It's a magnet. It's a filter. It's the difference between being desired for convenience and being loved for eternity. Live with intention. Live with clarity. Live with purpose. Build yourself. Protect your energy. Elevate your life. And when you do, the right man will not just notice. He will pursue. He will cherish. He will commit. And in that space, marriage is not just a dream. It becomes inevitable.